This is Jets FM on EOFN as we continue to preview the New York Jets 2021 season with episode 6, The Offensive Line. An 18-year assistant, John Benton, who left the same post in San Francisco to follow Coach Saleh to the New York Jets, and not only coach the offensive line, but add in a new role as run game coordinator. And Benton has a tough job because, as all Jet fans know, GM Joe Douglas is all business when it comes to building a strong offensive line. It will be up to Benton to get the best out of Mekhi Becton and the rest of this improved offensive line unit. Naturally, we start breaking down the Jets' O-line with Becton, who, even though enjoyed a mostly impressive rookie campaign, still missed 3 games with a shoulder injury and gave up 7 sacks with 7 flags. Mekhi talked about his recent foot injury and the concerns over taking care of his body.
It's been a little frustrating, but at the end of the day, I'm just trying to get myself right, get myself ready. So I know I'm going to be ready by the season. So it's been a little frustrating, but I've been getting the mental reps, been getting the plays mentally down. So that's a good part. I'm at a good weight right now. I feel like I'm at a good weight right now. I'm doing extra things on my own to keep it that way, eating the right things, got a chef, doing everything right to maintain my weight. I wouldn't say problem, but weight concerns that people have with me. I would say I'm doing everything in my power to keep it down.
The Jets line will go as far as Becton does. His talents are off the charts. More than anything, he needs to stay healthy. And if he does, it will have a domino effect to the rest of the offensive line, beginning with his new left guard mate, rookie Alijah Vera-Tucker. The Jets traded up from 23 to 14 with Minnesota to land the versatile lineman from USC, who spoke recently about his experience in playing the Jets' new outside zone blocking scheme.
I think the main reason why it's big strength is I have a lot of practice at it. Back at SC and Graham's offense, ran a whole lot of outside zone. And also, on top of that, I'm just, for how big I am, I'm just an athletic guy, who can get to a specific aiming point, the defensive lineman, cut him off, do whatever I need to do to get, my block, and, just create holes for the running back.
With Becton and Vera-Tucker lined up together, the Jets could be fielding one of the top left sides in the game for years to come. The Jets made a wise move, bolstering their offensive line depth up front with the signing of 6-year right tackle Morgan Moses. But don't be fooled. Moses is not a savior. Even though it took him 6 years to have his breakout season in 2020, he still allowed 5 sacks. A matter of fact, he has allowed exactly 5 sacks a season over 6 years, for a total of 30. On top of that, he has been flagged 57 times over his career. That is a 9.5 average per season. So, where does this leave George Fant? He's coming off a career high with 14 starts in 2020, earned the most snaps of his career last season, allowed just 3 sacks, and was flagged just twice.
Like I said, man, I've always looked at myself as a natural left tackle. This is my first time really starting and playing significant snaps every game. Starting, I think I played 14 this year. And I feel like I got better week by week, man. And it's not as easy as people think, man. It's switching over to that side. It's a lot that goes into it, man. But like I said, man, I'm pretty happy with it. There's some stuff that I really, really want to work on this offseason. Now that I know exactly what I'm doing, and I'll fix those things, and I'll be better for it.
Fant's experience to play both tackle spots is a big reason why he will probably end up as the team's top swing tackle in 2021, especially considering Mekhi Becton's inability to stay healthy last year. But if he really gets a chance to win that starting right tackle job, all it does is create better competition. And that's always a good thing. At right guard, Greg Van Routen is a pretty good veteran to have around. Recently, he spoke about the transition to the new blocking scheme.
Yeah, it's been different, and I think different can be good sometimes. And I think that we have the offensive line personnel to be very successful in a wide zone scheme, especially the way that Coach LaFleur has installed things, and Coach John Benton, teaches the techniques. It's very clear as to what's expected and where you have to be, and it's a little bit different than wide zone schemes I've been in the past, and that's good. It's an opportunity to learn and practice new things and get better as a player individually. So it's been exciting to be back here with the guys, learning the new stuff, and coming together as a unit early in the spring.
Van Routen has taken a different path to get to this point with the New York Jets. He was a rookie free agent, went undrafted back in 2012 with Green Bay. And he failed to make a single start in 2 seasons with the Packers, decided to leave for Canada, returned to the NFL in 2017 with Carolina, and made his first NFL start in 2018. He would then make 27 starts with Carolina over 2 seasons before injuring his toe and ended up missing the last 5 games in 2019. Then Greg switched from left guard to right guard upon signing with the Jets, started 13 games. Interesting enough, Van Routen did not get flagged once in his 13 starts, allowing just 3 sacks. As a matter of fact, in the 3 years that Greg Van Routen has started since his return to the NFL, he has allowed just 6 sacks and been flagged just 4 times. And one thing's for certain, Greg Van Routen is Ivy League smart. And that explains why he is the team's union rep. And you might have also noticed that he has been hanging around New York Islander playoff games during the Islander playoff run. And that's because he's a New York native and grew up an Islander fan. He's the one who's most responsible for recruiting the likes of the chugging cult hero and fellow line mate Dan Feeney. Speaking of Feeney, the former 3rd-round draft pick by the LA Chargers has played in 63 of a potential 64 games while making 57 starts. But his overall game just hasn't translated yet to the pros, especially last season when he was asked to play center for the first time. And that's why we say this a lot. You always have to give these free agent players who have never played for more than one team, or maybe even a coaching staff or a scheme, an opportunity for a second chance, especially somebody who is as talented and somebody who was drafted as high as Dan Feeney was. And especially since Feeney's going to get the opportunity to play in the system in which he excelled at while he was with the Indiana Hoosiers in college. Now I'm just going to read here excerpts from the Oilers draft guide on Dan Feeney. 4-year starter, allowed just 2 sacks in 3,355 snaps, an athletic and physical, quick-footed zone blocking leader of the Hoosiers offensive line, an intense effort and hustle player, a football smart and aware talent, a 2-time team captain, an All-American, and his best fit is in a zone blocking scheme. Again, you can see that it's maybe too late for you to order the 2017 draft guide, but the profile naturally is on the depth chart for the New York Jets. That just, again, though, makes my point of what I just mentioned a few seconds ago. Some players, not all of them, deserve a second chance. Feeney's going to get that chance, and we'll find out whether or not, first of all, he can make the team, and if he does, whether or not he can have a second career, really even a first career, because things did not go very well for him in LA. Under center, Conor McGovern started all 16 games for the New York Jets in 2020, just 1 year removed from starting 16 games at center for the Denver Broncos for the very first time in his career. In the same season in which he allowed 1 sack and was flagged just 1 time. Last season, though, was a completely different story. McGovern was flagged 3 times and gave up 6 sacks. He talked after the 2020 season ended about how well the team responded late in the season and how that will hopefully translate to 2021.
I think we grew every day, and there's a reason we became a pretty competitive football team by the end of the year. I'd talked to guys around the league, my buddies who are still playing. They're like, man, you guys really turned it around. You guys became a heck of a football team there in the last quarter and a half of the season. So it's something that, I'm really working on to help change and something that I find extremely important and something that I would like to be a part of. I know all the guys are the same way. And like I said, that's the part about being a young football team. Guys are here to win. They're not here at the end of their career kind of collecting that last paycheck before they retire. There's a lot of guys that have a long career ahead of them. And the reason you play this game is to win. So, every day what's on my mind is winning football games. And to do that, you got to change the culture. I know it's a word that gets thrown around a lot, doesn't have a huge, definite definition. But it's something you can feel. It's something that needs to be there to win football games. And it's something that in my opinion, it's going to be the number one thing on the new head coach's mind. And it's definitely the number one thing on my mind. And the thing that I find most important to winning football games. Culture beats talent any day of the week. So I think once that ship's starting to turn, ships are hard to turn, and same with the culture. So it's getting there, and it's going to keep turning. And once it does a full 180, we'll be going the right way.
Jets fans should not be too quick to push Conor McGovern out the door. Not only was McGovern the second-rated athletic offensive lineman at the 2016 NFL Combine, but he also broke the record for squatting and bench press at college with Missouri. Alex Lewis is coming off his best season as a pro after not allowing a sack on 544 snaps. But the team still restructured his contract and dropped his 2021 salary nearly in half to $3 million, allowing him to become an unrestricted free agent after the season. There is talk about him competing for the right guard spot with Van Routen and others, but just as George Fant might be more useful as a swing tackle, Lewis might also be more valuable to the team as a top versatile lineman, capable of playing just about anywhere but center. Lewis has made 39 career starts at left tackle and left guard in 4 years, including 21 the last 2 seasons with the Jets at left guard. Other key players fighting for roster spots includes Chuma Edoga, Cameron Clark, and Connor McDermott. Edoga was a 5-star recruit at a USC who actually won Player of the Week honors at the Senior Bowl. In 19 career NFL games, Edoga has given up 8 sacks, been flagged 11 times in 656 snaps. And the change to a new zone blocking scheme could actually do Edoga well. You're talking about one of the best athletes at his position when he came out of college. And he's just also too talented to give up on this early. Clark was never going to see the field in 2020, so he is still very much in the mix. He has Dean Litt's intelligence, was a 2-time team captain at Charlotte, where he made 35 starts, and will offer inside-outside versatility. And most importantly, Joe Douglas is a fan. McDermott could actually be somebody to keep an eye on. He's played in 22 games for the Jets and made 3 starts. Not sure if you're aware of that, because I wasn't. I had to look back I know I haven't really paid attention to a lot of these bad games and who was playing offensive line, but that kind of surprised me. McDermott was playing left tackle for UCLA when he was 24 years old. He was a redshirt senior at the time. He is going to be 29 years old already when we get to October. I just think he has enough raw talent for somebody that really wasn't heavily recruited until he was a senior in high school, because he was really more of a basketball player at that time. And some players are just late bloomers. I know 29 is getting up there, but he's got talent. Matter of fact, I'm going to look into the Our-Lads draft guide when McDermott came out, and we're going to tell you what we found kind of interesting. McDermott has tools that do not come around very often. He is a better athlete than he is on tape, but lacks the confidence to trust it. If he can be put into the right system, there is potential here that most tackles simply do not have. He is a risk, but one with a high potential reward. And look, the Jets did not draft McDermott, so there really was no risk for the Jets. And he's been around in a lot of bad teams, new coaching staff, so we'll see. But I just don't think you could forget about McDermott. And keep in mind, he has only given up 3 sacks. Also something I'm not sure that you realized, and was flagged just twice in 412 snaps with the Jets. So that's not bad. With everything that's been going on with the Jets offensive line, and it hasn't been good since McDermott's been a part of it, those stats aren't that bad. The Jets will likely start the season with 8 and no more than 9 offensive linemen on the roster, which means someone like James Murray is a long shot. He was a college free agent with the Chiefs back in 2018, actually played in a couple of games, but then got hurt, and the injuries really affected his opportunity to hang around with Kansas City after that. The Jets then signed him late in 2019 to the practice squad, but he has not lined up and played yet for the Jets. Murray was actually a walk-on, 4-year starter at Holy Cross, and played just about everywhere on the offensive line. And he's also smart, he's athletic, and he's a guy that you're going to give a long shot to, but you're going to, you know what they say, I'd rather have a long shot than no shot at all. So he's got a shot. It's just a long shot. But we'll keep an eye on James Murray, because that's the other thing to keep in mind is the Jets do not have a ton of backup centers. So we'll find out whether James Murray has what it takes to at least hang around with the team, if not on the final 53 when we get to week 1. And speaking of the practice squad, look for the 3 rookies who went undrafted and signed by the Jets: Tristan Hodge, Grant Hermans, and Teton Salties to all make the practice squad along the offensive line for the Jets. We'll start with Salties, who started 3 years at New Mexico and was a Mountain West Conference 2-time All-Academic. And by all accounts, he's very smart, very impressive individual. He's going to law school, for crying out loud. So the guy's got some smarts. There's no question about that. And he ran a 4.940 on his pro day, which would have ranked, I think, in 4th if there was a combine. Would have been in the top 5 for fastest offensive lineman. So that's pretty impressive too. Hermans was a team captain and a 4-year starter who comes from a military family, but actually chose Purdue over Air Force. And Hermans was also a state champion wrestler in New Mexico. Hodge could be the most interesting one because he's got the name recognition, being the nephew of Merrill Hodge, the former Pittsburgh Steeler and NFL player. But Hodge was actually the number 1 recruit at center when he came out in 2015 and went to Notre Dame. Then he transfers over to BYU and ends up playing the last few years with Zach Wilson. So you're looking at a talented kid and somebody that, again, has got some ability both at center and a couple other positions along the offensive line. So that's what I'm saying. Look out for these guys. I think this might be the most impressive group of undrafted offensive linemen that I've seen that the Jets have brought in. I mean, and this kid's big. He's physical. He's tough, very athletic, and I think he's gonna. I don't think there's any doubt in my mind that these guys will make the practice squad. I just don't think they have any chance of making the team because there's just too much depth this year in the offensive line for any of these guys to make the team, barring injuries. But I could, that's why I could see as many as 9 linemen. 8's usually the number, but I could see the Jets keeping 9 because I think it's going to be kind of hard with the depth that this Jet offensive line has starting at camp. So that's the New York Jets offensive line group for the 2021 season. And as they enter training camp, it should be a lot of fun to keep an eye on. This is a deep group. And even though, and we just talked about some of the undrafted kids, they're not going to make the team, but they are going to be kids to watch. I don't know how many times you take a look at these undrafted kids that come around every year on the offensive line from these schools, and you're like, yeah, who are these guys? And yeah, you never hear about them. And then they're off playing for other teams. I just don't think that's the case this year. Joe Douglas knows his offensive line. And these kids, even the kids that are not going to make the final roster, the ones that are going to land on the practice squad, it will be interesting to find out how valuable or how good these kids really are. We'll find that out based on the competition from the veterans. Because, again, you're looking at 8, no more than 9 offensive linemen that are going to be kept on the final roster. And you look at it, I've got here, if I'm going over the guys who I think are going to be the locks, I'm gonna say, obviously you got Becton and Tucker. You got your left tackle, your left guard. You got McGovern at center. You have, I still believe Van Routen's a lock at right guard. And you've got Moses at right tackle. And then you got Fant, the swing. That's 6. I think Alex Lewis is too, I don't think they restructured his deal for nothing. I think they restructured it. They know he's more than likely going to make the team. He's a cheap option now. And he's somebody that's just because his value, being able to play anywhere along the offensive line should be important. That's 7 already. Okay? So that means we're talking about, and look, there is, and when we're talking about locks, I think the only other guy that I think would probably be considered a lock to make the team would be Cameron Clark. As long as Cameron Clark proves that he's every bit the player that Joe Douglas thought he was going to be when he drafted him. Joe Douglas is not going to draft somebody in the 4th round and then just expose him the next season. It's just not going to happen unless the kid was a bust. I just don't think that's going to happen. So I think Clark is also going to make the team. So now we're pretty much at a situation where it's like, okay, we got one guy left. And what about Udoka? I thought he was coming on. Yeah, he kind of was, and he's very talented. But this coaching staff and this general manager did not draft Udoka. And maybe there's just not a fit here. That's the guy I can see gets traded because he's probably the only one that could get traded that they would want to part with, that they could also get something in value from. And I'm only talking about, I think maybe they'd be lucky to get a 5th rounder since he was a 4th rounder a couple of years ago. Maybe they could. And worst case scenario, you get a 6th rounder, or maybe you go player for player if there's another position of need that the Jets are interested in. But I just think Udoka is, look, unless he has a really good camp, Udoka is definitely a trade candidate. And then you take a look at some of the other guys. How is Feeney going to fit in here? I don't know. I mean, I don't think Feeney's going to make this team. I think the only way Feeney makes the team is if he does prove that the scheme change was what was missing from his career. And he needed a change of scenery. And he's now going to be the player that he was supposed to be when he came out of college. If that's the case, then see what I'm saying? So maybe Alex Lewis does get traded or get cut. So there's just so much depth here. That's why the McDermotts and the Murrays, there's just no room for him. I mean, McDermott, same thing. See, when I talked about these guys the way that I did in this report, I was being truthful. But what has to happen is the Udokas, the McDermotts, the Murrays, and even Van Routen, I think, has got to step up and make sure that he's going to play well. He can't just walk onto the field during training camp and be like, "Yeah, I'm the union rep. I'm the incumbent. I'm the guy." He's not that talented. He's a good, decent veteran, but if Feeney outplays him and starts, Van Routen probably doesn't have a place on this team as a backup. That's I think Lewis's role. That's why I think Lewis makes a lot of sense, because he can handle so many different positions like Fant. And they're the two perfect backups for this team. So you have your 5 starters and you have Fant and Lewis. And then, but you only have 1 or 2 spots left. And that's where you get all that competition we're talking about, like I said. So look, it's up to Clark. It is up to Feeney. It's up to Van Routen. It is up to, again, all of them, Adoga, McDermott. They have talent, which is what you want. You want all of this competition in camp, but they're all not going to make the team. But that's what happens when you have a talented team. And I look at this. I look at when you're taking a look, even though there's more depth now than we've ever seen it, and we're going to start talking defense tomorrow. The overall talent, though, like the upper tier talent, we're not there yet. I think there's a little bit of that at wide receiver. I can see that a little bit, but that's it. We're not seeing it yet at tight end. It's only one guy. And we're not sure about any of that at running back. And we just don't really see that one guy, because that's a committee kind of deal anyway with that unit. But there's still depth. With the offensive line, yeah, there's a couple of guys, high-end ceiling guys on this offensive line. But there's also some incredible depth. And what happens if one of these undrafted kids comes into camp? What happens if, this Hodge kid comes in and plays just incredible? It's like, I'm not putting this guy in a practice squad. He's out playing these veterans. Well, look, don't think for a second that Joe Douglas won't trade these guys. And some of these guys could be worth, some late round draft picks as we get closer to the end of camp. Now, some of them, or 1 or 2 of them, might get just released. But you might be able to trade one of them. That's why I said Adoga is probably the one guy that makes the most sense as far as a trade candidate. The other guys are veterans and would more than likely just get cut. So, look, as far as the main guys, I think we know what we saw last year with Becton. When he was on the field and he was playing, he was doing a pretty good job. And yes, he gave up his sacks, and yes, he committed penalties, but he is a rookie. And I don't want to hear any comparisons to Tristan Wirfs. First of all, I like Wirfs. We talked about that last year when we were going over the draft, and how I would have been perfectly fine either way with Wirfs or Becton. And I'm just still fine with Becton, because the only difference between Wirfs and Becton last year was health. The 2 things, health, and one guy got to play with Tom Brady. The other guy had Sam Darnold behind him. And that's just, you talk about difference, a quarterback, you can't have a bigger difference. So I'm not worried about the ceiling for Becton. Moses, I said before, you can't there's a lot of fans out there going crazy about the signing of Morgan Moses. Nice signing, coming off his best season. He adds depth, which is great to add that type of depth this late in the offseason on an offensive line. Again, something that we have not seen in this organization for years. That's the exciting thing. But Morgan Moses is not like an all-pro. Morgan Moses is not even, silly Pro Bowl stuff that comes out, which I just think is ridiculous. But that's not the type of player he is. He is just a reliable, solid right tackle. A little bit above average based on his season last season. But we also talked about it. He gives up sacks. He gives up like 5 sacks a year. That's okay. It's not great. It's not terrible, but it's just okay. But that's what he does. He solidifies the depth, because there's always going to be injuries. When was the last time the Jets had an offensive line with the Indianapolis Colts? They've had like 2 lost starts in the offensive line in like 3 years, some crazy thing like that. So unless some crazy thing like that happens with the Jets anytime soon, you're going to have to rely on your 6th lineman, your 7th lineman, and so forth. And that's the whole idea of what makes Morgan Moses a really valuable piece to the team. And that's and again, that just slides Fant down to the backup role. You're talking about a player who actually is coming off his best season. That's why everybody was talking how bad the offensive line was. Look, it is possible George Fant can beat out Morgan Moses. I just think that unless Fant beats him out, to the point where it's like, oh, you have to go with Fant. You just have to. I don't think that's going to happen. I think their talents, I think, are at this point in their careers, I think their talents are pretty equal. I really do. But Fant is just more valuable because he can play left tackle and right tackle. But the Jets might say, hey, Fant just outplayed Moses, so we're going to start Fant at right tackle. And if anything happens to Becton, we'll just slide Fant over to left tackle. So anything is possible. I'm not ruling Fant out not making the team and not starting, but the chances are when you sign a guy like Morgan Moses, you're going to start him. And again, I just think it's just too valuable. And look, Fant is another one of these guys. I think like McDermott, these guys needed a few years because they were basketball players mainly. Early on in their high school, college careers, they were basketball guys. And it takes time. And so Fant he's coming off his best year. It's nice. And I think McDermott's coming off his best season in a limited, number of games, and a much different player who more than likely won't make the team unless he makes incredible strides. And then again, you got Alex Lewis, who is also coming off his best season. And it's interesting that some of these guys are coming off their best season, and yet the offensive line in general was pretty bad. And I said this a lot. It's one of the things I talked about repeatedly with Sam Darnold's game. One of the things that nobody talks about with Sam Darnold is how important it is for a quarterback to understand the blocking schemes in front of him on plays that he's calling. People think that quarterbacks are calling plays and they have to change plays at the line of scrimmage based on how maybe the safety looks or the linebacker looks. But a lot of it could also do with what's going on in front of him on the line of scrimmage, the blocking schemes that he knows is taking place. And he's very much responsible for those blocking schemes. And I think that's where Sam Darnold really fails a lot of the time. Which is, look, we're not going to see a dramatic improvement because Zach Wilson's a rookie. But I just think if you were to put a good veteran quarterback on the New York Jets offensive line, like any offensive line, they're going to just be better. That's all. And I'm not trying to tell you that Jets last year's offensive line was any good because they were terrible. All I'm trying to tell you is that, like, for instance, McGovern. Here's a guy that had at Pro Football Focus, they had his passing grade was, I believe, 40 points different from 2019 to 2020. It was 82 in 2019. That's what they graded McGovern and his pass protection. They graded him with a 42 last year. That is not all Conor McGovern. I'm sorry, it's not. Okay? So that's quarterback. That's other talent. It's guys around you. It's scheme. It's coaching. You just can't grade these guys just based on, oh, well, look at Conor McGovern last year. He was rated as I don't even know what he was. He was rated as the 28th center by Pro Football Focus. He stinks. He's no good. He's making $10 million. He should go. Oh, he's got one more year left on his contract for the dead cap. He'll be gone by next year. I don't know if Conor McGovern will be gone next year. It all depends on how well he plays. And I could see I could see this entire offensive line being that much better, even with a rookie quarterback. Also, because not only is it because I think Zach Wilson can't be any worse than Sam Darnold when it comes to helping his offensive line out, but the talent around him. When you have talented running backs, talented receivers, talented tight ends, really good coaching, and positive energy, everything, it makes that much of a difference. But we do still know that there are going to be a couple more spots long term the Jets have got to fix on the offensive line. The left side looks pretty good. If McGovern rebounds and plays well, they'll re-sign him. And if it's to forget about last year, he's back to being the 2019 guy. They're set there at center pretty much. He's still in the prime of his career. But the right side of the line still needs to be taken care of as far as draft picks. That could be Cameron Clark. How do we know it's not Cameron Clark? How do we know it's not one of these undrafted free agents we talked about? Which is why, if these kids impress during training camp, Joe Douglas is just not going to go, I'm going to let this guy be unprotected because, well, one of these veterans that are on the team, like one of those guards, Feeney or Van Routen, Lewis, yeah, they're okay, but like let's just say Lewis or any of them, because any of them could be gone after this year. Joe Douglas is not going to keep all three of those guys on this team to lose someone he believes could be a 6, 7, 8-year guy that he's willing to take a chance with him this year. And again, that's why I don't think Lewis is going to be gone, because I think Lewis is going to make things a lot easier, that if he wants to cut Van Routen or you cut Feeney, that Lewis can handle a couple of those different positions. Look, I think it's going to be a lot of fun. This might even be the unit to watch during camp. And if I had the opportunity to go to camp, I would be glued to the offensive line, defensive line battles. That's all. That's what I like watching anyway on the Senior Bowl. And that is what I would be all over at training camp. I want to see what happens with this offensive line, each and every one of these guys, and see how they're all playing all the way down the line to the undrafted kids. And I think it's going to be a lot of fun. So that is going to wrap it up for the offense in episode 6 with the offensive line. And we go from the offensive line to the defensive line. With episode 7, we'll have 3 episodes to cover the defense. Linebackers after that, the secondary, which will probably... Linebacker is not going to be too bad. There's not a lot of linebackers to go through. There's a lot of defensive linemen, and there's a boatload of defensive backs. That's going to be a nightmare. It's almost like this show. I think we cover 12 or 13 players on this show. Probably do the same thing, if not more, when we get to the defensive backs. And then we'll also cover the special teams. So we'll wrap this thing up this week at some point. And that coincides with the beginning of training camp. As we are recording this show on a Monday, training camp begins on Tuesday for the New York Jets. So we'll definitely be talking about training camp with Jan Levine. Jan and I will talk about what's going on down there at camp. We'll give it a few days. I'll get these reports in the books, and then I'll have some more free time too to be able to talk about everything else going on in the NFL. Can't wait to do that. We have 31 other teams to talk about. We will get into that real soon. Same thing with college football. We did not cover a lot of college football last year for obvious reasons, but we are going to be back and ready to go for college football. It's going to be a lot of fun this year, and fantasy football. We hinted, and I don't have to hint anymore. We are creating a dynasty league for our lads in association with our partners over at RotoWire. And RotoWire, if you're familiar with them, they're one of the top, if not the best fantasy sites out there. And they've done a tremendous job over the years. And we're going to partner with them on this Dynasty League. And I think it's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to have weekly fantasy shows. We're going to talk about Dynasty football. And, of course, it's a perfect marriage with our lads and the emphasis on rookies, first-year players, second-year players. I think that's a perfect fit to do a Dynasty League fantasy-style show, which we're going to do starting the first week of August. So we'll talk more about that in the coming days as well. So fantasy football, NFL, and college football all coming up real soon. Next week. Look, once we get into August, it's Jets 2020-21 season previews over. Everything else is an open book to the NFL, all 32 teams, all 120 college football teams and fantasy football here on the Our Lads Football Network. So that's it for Jets FM on the OFN. Thanks for tuning in to our episode 6 edition as we wrap up the offensive line right here on our preview of the New York Jets for the 2021 season. We'll see you next time.